could improve the standard of care for diagnosis. Obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, or HCM, is a thickening of the heart muscle wall that makes it difficult for the heart to fill with blood. Untreated, HCM can result in life-threatening irregular heart rhythms and sudden death. Mavacamten is our game-changing treatment for HCM. It's the first medicine to treat the underlying causes of the disease, not just the symptoms. In fact, just last week, a physician showed me this picture when he was reviewing scans from his patient. And he said, look, you can see that the heart is remodeling itself. But HCM has always been hard to diagnose, even for specialists. It can take an average of 2 years from the time the patient develops symptoms to when they get a definitive diagnosis and treatment. So the question is, how do we identify patients with HCM sooner and enable earlier detection? Well, we partnered with Viz.ai, which is a company that supplies analytics to hospitals that help interpret the thousands of electrocardiograms administered across those systems. With our sponsorship, they developed an algorithm to analyze ECG results, looking for very hard to find markers for HCM. And when the algorithm detects possible HCM, it alerts doctors which patients need additional evaluation, and that can shave off significant time to when patients are able to benefit from this medicine. Just last August, the FDA issued clearance for this algorithm, and that's a first. It's also a great example of the value of collaborations and partnerships and how they can speed the way to patient solutions. We've always said we don't have a monopoly on great ideas. Working together, we can do so much more than we can do alone, such as tackling really difficult scientific challenges like Alzheimer's disease, a large and growing unmet need around the world. And while there are now 2 approved products in the US to treat Alzheimer's, other approaches are urgently needed. Here you see a human brain. There are billions of cells in every single brain, and within each one of those cells, 20,000 genes are expressed at different levels, all leading to this coordinated story in the human brain that we don't fully understand. For example, we know that when certain proteins begin to clump or aggregate in the brain, this leads to inflammation, which in turn causes brain cells to die. When brain cells die, symptoms begin to emerge, such as memory loss. With AI tools, we can look at each and every one of those cells and sort through the features of protein aggregation that correlate to someone who will develop Alzheimer's disease. We now know that one of the most important proteins that aggregates in the brain is called tau. By clearing tau protein from the brain, we hypothesize that we will prevent inflammation and, most importantly, prevent brain cells from dying. We have an anti-tau antibody in early development that, if successful, could potentially prevent cognitive decline and give someone many more years of their memory to live happy, healthy, and productive lives. And that's what we think of as truly transformational. And that's what drives us at Bristol Myers Squibb. These are just a few of the many examples of how digital technologies and tools, and frankly, our hearts being in the right place, can start to shift the incremental to the exponential. What an incredibly exciting time to be in this industry. We have witnessed tremendous progress in how patients with serious diseases can be treated and respond to transformational medicines. Over the last 100 years, we've gained 25 years of life expectancy through innovation with vaccines, modern medicines, and frankly, really smart and dedicated people doing the hard work. Integrate digital technology, we can add another 25 years of life expectancy in half the time. But of course, the ultimate accelerant is the human in the room. It's people. And we believe that will always be the case. Talented, passionate people who work with a singular focus to deliver more medicines to more patients even faster. On a personal note, having grown up in a small town in Arkansas in the American South, I could never have imagined that I would be here today in the midst of the monumental advances that we are making as an industry and that are on display here at BioAsia. I was very fortunate, though, to be raised by a large, tight-knit family. Almost every night, we spent time together, not just as an immediate family, but as an extended family and friends and relatives. And those experiences taught me about the value of community, being part of something bigger than the individual, where people have each other's backs. It is my hope that we can remind each other of the importance of finding the best in people and appreciating every contribution that gets made. I am so excited about what we can do together and am honored to be part of the future that is being made right here in India today. Together, we can shape the future of healthcare globally and deliver more for patients. So thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
And now I would like to request Mr. Christopher Berner, PhD, Chief Executive Officer of Bristol Myers Squibb, to please say a few words.
Good morning, and thank you all, Honorable Chief Minister Reddy Garu and Minister Baba Garu, and as well as distinguished guests. It's such a tremendous pleasure to be representing Bristol Myers Squibb at this important conference, and it's a true honor to be giving the keynote address shortly. I just want to say a very sincere thank you to the organizers of this event. This event really does epitomize the ecosystem that has been created here in India and here specifically in Hyderabad. Bristol Myers Squibb has an almost 30-year commitment to India, and I'm extremely pleased that we have established a presence now here in Hyderabad. In less than a year, we have taken our presence from an idea to almost 1,000 employees. And that success was not by accident. It came about because of the tremendous support that we've received from the honorable ministers, from the government of Telangana, from the organizers of this event. And I sincerely thank all of you. India and now Hyderabad are at the center of our mission as a company to deliver truly transformational medicines to patients. So it is a heartfelt thank you to all of you, and I look forward to this conference.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
Let us now hear from Dr. Ajit Shetty, Chairman of International Advisory Board of BioAsia, as he provides his perspective with his valuable words.
Honorable Chief Minister and friends, it has been a privilege for me to have been associated since 2012 when I was chair of Janssen. And I came from Belgium and found this little nucleus being created here in Hyderabad, and it has grown into a gigantic scale of a hub for innovation, which is incredible proof to the efforts that's been put here in the past. Now, I don't want to take up too much time, but I just want to say they've moved from just disrupting the current state of affairs towards creating the future. And to end with Dr. Paul Janssen's words, the patients are waiting, so let's move ahead. Thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us move on to our next keynote address. It is going to be by Dr. Rodney Hockman, President and CEO of Providence. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome him with a huge round of applause. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. It's the first time I've ever followed a Nobel laureate. I'll give this a try. Coming to Hyderabad is like coming home for us. As many of you know in this audience, Hyderabad is the home of the Providence Global Center. We've been in Hyderabad now for 4 years, and we are the first health system in the United States that has established a presence in India, in Hyderabad, particularly for information technology and the concepts around AI and data. Today, we have 1,400 caregivers in Hyderabad. Yesterday, we were glad to dedicate our new headquarters here, and we look at the future in exponential growth in Hyderabad. We consider Hyderabad and Providence, India, as important as Providence, California, or Providence, Washington. Our hometown, so thank you so much for everything that we have here, and we look to a bright future as we go forward. Our home headquarters is in Seattle, Washington, which in a lot of ways has a lot of similarities to Hyderabad. We're the home of Microsoft. What's that other company that starts with an A? I think it's called Amazon. So we are used to living in a high-tech hub, but we very, very carefully selected Hyderabad, and two of my colleagues that are with me today have been in India, in Hyderabad, for 20 years. And they did the initial work to get Microsoft started here in India, and they've done a tremendous job for us at Providence. What we're looking forward to in the United States, I'm the past chair of the American Hospital Association. In the United States, we have 5,000 hospitals, and probably, I would say, about 800 to 1,000 health systems. What we're looking forward to the future is bringing partnerships of other health systems to us in India. And we've already started with one, Advent Health, that started, but I can tell you there's a lineup of my colleagues in the United States that want to be part of what's happening in India. So why India, why Hyderabad, and what's the transformation? So healthcare, like in India, is a little bit chaotic at times. I represent the delivery side of healthcare. So we're situated in the western United States, and we have hospitals, 52 hospitals, from Alaska to Lubbock, Texas. We have over 1,000 clinics, and we have 121,000 caregivers in the United States, and we service anywhere from 5 to 10 million patients in the U.S. About 8 years ago, we said we need to transform our own healthcare system and healthcare. And we needed to go from just a patient care delivery system to an information and services company. So we figured out we couldn't do it alone, so we started hiring people from Amazon and Microsoft and other tech companies to help transform our organization. And one of the first things they said, we need to broaden our scope of computer engineering, and that's why we're here in India. But more than that, we really needed to become a data and analytics organization. So last year, as we've left COVID, we called last year at Providence the year of human connection. We stopped getting behind our screens and started to get back together like what we're doing today. But this year, we declared, and going forward, for Providence and for healthcare, it's the year of transformation and collaboration. Transformation and collaboration. Healthcare needs to transform. The delivery side needs to transform. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through the tools of AI and data. So Providence started on a journey to digitize itself and to become a completely digital company, which I would say over the last 5 years, we're almost there. In addition to that, we said that as a healthcare organization, we need to diversify our portfolio. So today, we're a services company that implements electronic health records in Great Britain, in Western Europe, and almost every state in the United States. So a lot of times when a new electronic health record is going on, our people are doing that work as we go forward. The second thing that we said is that we need, data is chaotic in healthcare. And we were not willing to allow our friends at Microsoft and Facebook and Amazon to take our health data. So what we did is said, let's get the health systems of the United States together to create our own data company. Today, Truveta is about 3 years old. It has over 35 health systems that are contributing all of their healthcare data to one point. The power of this is immense. So we account for anywhere from 12 to 15% and growing of all healthcare data in the United States. The importance in terms of biomedical research is that database is incredibly diverse. So it has everything from Hawaiian Islanders to people living in South Central Los Angeles to people that live in Alaska. That kind of a database is critically important to our friends in pharma who are looking to unlock unique properties for medications that they have. Amongst that is almost limitless. The United States government has started to ask us about our data and how we collect it. And we think this is going to be a revolution in the way we do it. But what's critically important is it's data owned by the people that actually do the work and take care of the patients. And we have been tremendously successful in that. In addition to that, we created an organization called Tegria, which enables us to provide services to other hospitals all around the United States and ultimately around the world and particularly in Europe as we stand now. So we've really diversified our portfolio. In addition, we talk about the 6 Ds at Providence. Digitization, diversification. Then the third one's a little controversial, deconstruction, which means we take the health system apart and decide which components are the most important, which ones have value. Today, Providence, in addition to its 52 hospitals, 1,000 clinics, 120,000 caregivers, we're in supportive housing. We have our own health plan. And we even have a high school in Burbank, California. And all of my investors ask us, why did we hold on to a high school in Burbank, California, Providence High School? And when with our investors, they say, we need to know what 14 to 16-year-olds are thinking. And it's really our laboratory to understand where the future is going. We were started 170 years ago in the territory of Washington in the Western United States. That tradition, we've always changed, we've always innovated as we went forward. And our saying at Providence is that we exist at an intersection between compassion and innovation. Last year, we did over $2 billion of free care community service in the United States, in addition to being a $28 billion healthcare corporation. We're looking at the collaboration amongst healthcare systems to really solve some of the problems that we have in the United States in the development of care. So those are the first 3 Ds. Well, what else is there in other Ds? The other D is the delivery of care. We're looking at the scientific way that we deliver care to decrease technologically the burden on doctors and nurses. So today we have a co-caring model of nursing so that our nurses in our hospitals and clinics literally have partners that are on their computers at home doing some of the work along with them. So we look at that as a way to make the difference in healthcare, and we look at things like telemedicine and all of those techniques to really revolutionize the D, which is the delivery of care. What's the 5th D? Diagnostic and therapeutics. If you have any doubt about that, you heard from our first 2 speakers. I've been a physician for 45 years, and we've seen just a dramatic change in what we're able to do. When I started in practice, we kept a total hip replacement in the hospital for 2 weeks. Today, we do it as an outpatient. One of our surgeons operated during COVID on a patient in London from his robotic surgery platform in Seattle, Washington. Seattle operating on a patient in London. So the delivery of care and how we do it and the diagnostics that we use are just going to be remarkable. I'm on the board of GE Healthcare, so very, very interested in the diagnostics that we use in CT scanning and others that make such a difference in our ability to diagnose and care for patients rapidly and thoughtfully. I would never think today what we're able to do 45 years ago in terms of what we're able to offer patients. The last D is probably the most important. I cheat a little bit. It's data and artificial intelligence. So today, Providence has a whole group of folks that do nothing but think about the applications of artificial intelligence. One of the things that we've done, which is different than others that are dabbling in artificial intelligence, is we've said, how do we apply AI to make clinicians and nurses smarter and have less burden? So what's the biggest problem today that most physicians have on the front line? They have an electronic inbox that is this big. And they spend most of their time trying to answer electronic questions and everything else from their patients. Many of us send our questions on our iPhones to our physicians. Well, we've used AI to basically empty the inbox for physicians. So using bots and using artificial intelligence, we triage what the questions are, what has to be answered, and most importantly, who has to answer them. We're also developing AI techniques that can give physicians the answers to complex questions at the point of service, something we call Pearl, which enables clinicians to really have the information that they need. When I was back as an intern and a resident a few years ago, I had everything in a book in my pocket. Today that, I can listen to it in my ear sequence to understand what are the choices and what are the things that we have to do to make patients better, faster, and smarter. Today, we don't read an EKG. It's read electronically for us. Most of you have a watch and you're checking your own EKG as we go. We believe that through AI, things like making sure that CAT scans and MRIs are read the right way, this will become commonplace. And we need to use these techniques to make care smarter and better. We need to take the average physician and turn them into the superb physician. And that's where we really see this exciting interface between technology and healthcare. When we first started hiring technology people at Providence, technology people did not understand healthcare people. Healthcare people did not understand technology people. So we had a Venn diagram, and we had them both here. When you put the two together, that's where magic occurs. So we brought in our folks from Microsoft and everywhere else and sat them down with our clinicians, with our scientists, and with our administrators. And I think that's the secret sauce, to understand how technology can work practically and how data can be used to accelerate what a healthcare system can do. And that's what we believe. Today, we think there's going to be further consolidation of the health systems. We're talking to health systems in India about what they're doing because we believe there's commonality in the problems that we're solving. When we had COVID first hit, we had the first patient who had COVID in Washington State back in 2020. Within one day, we were on the phone with our colleagues in China and in Italy to understand what we needed to do with our patients. And that sense of collaboration is something particularly for us is going to be critically important as we go forward. But we're looking at consolidating all the business practices of healthcare systems in the United States together. So I pose the question, why should every healthcare system in the country and the world have their own cybersecurity? It makes no sense. In order to combat what we need to do on the cyber side, we need to do this together. So we believe things like information technology, cyber, data, actually even finding the right people to work at our hospitals and clinics are things that we should do together as a group of health systems. So we'll be announcing within the next few months what we call the Health System Collaborative, HSC, which means these are health systems in the United States that have said, we're going to look at the whole back office of healthcare and drive that together, both to do it less expensively, but better. So, our vision, as you can see up here, is health for a better world. We look at ourselves as not just a United States-based health ministry, but an international health ministry. And we feel that one of the keys to our success and the success of healthcare in the United States is going to be our commitment here in India with some of the smartest IT technology people we have, and that collaboration. So thank you so much for having me here today.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
I welcome Professor Greg Semanza to please share his acceptance speech.
Honorable Chief Minister, Honorable Minister, and assembled dignitaries and guests, it's a great honor for me to accept the 2024 Genome Valley Excellence Award. I would like to thank the BioAsia International Advisory Board, Shakti Nagapan, the CEO of BioAsia, and the government of Telangana. I'm also grateful to my wife, Laura, who is here today, and my children for their constant support. Throughout my career, I have endeavored, despite my many imperfections, to increase our understanding of fundamental biological processes with the hope of translating that knowledge to the clinic in the form of novel therapies for common diseases. It has been gratifying that our basic science discoveries have enabled the development of new effective treatments for anemia and kidney cancer, as I'll describe in my lecture. The current research in my laboratory is focused on, as you heard, the development of novel inhibitors of the hypoxia-inducible factors for two applications: the prevention of vision loss in patients with diabetic eye disease and macular degeneration, and also the treatment of a wide range of human cancers. In both of these areas, we have very encouraging results from animal studies and are hopeful that these drugs will progress to clinical trials in the near future. Thank you once again.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
Our next keynote address is going to be by Professor Greg Semanza, Nobel laureate and Professor Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, who has been the recipient of the Genome Valley Award this year. So congratulations to you, sir, and over to you.
It's a great honor to speak to you all today about a subject near and dear to my heart, which is oxygen. And we require many things in this life, but nothing more than oxygen. And if you dispute that fact, please hold your breath and I'll get back to you later. The discovery of a system that ensures that every one of the 50 trillion cells in your body receives adequate oxygen at every moment of every day for your entire life. And this is basically a very simple matter of supply and demand. The cells use oxygen to generate energy in the mitochondria, and then we have respiratory and circulatory systems to deliver that oxygen. And the hypoxia-inducible factors that we discovered serve to regulate oxygen supply and demand If oxygen is not available, the cells use metabolic processes that don't require oxygen, and oxygen delivery is increased through changes in the circulatory and respiratory systems. Well, this was the scene in Stockholm in 2009. You can see the royal family on the right, the laureates on the left, and Nobel in the middle there. This was the King of Sweden giving me the Nobel Award, and this is the award. Thank you very much. On the front, you can see Albert Nobel, his birth date, and the year that he died, which was 1896, and he died on December 10th. And so the Nobel Prizes are awarded on December 10th every year, which is a fairly dark day in Stockholm. But it was also very nice in the winter. And then on the back, you can see my name and the date of the award, 2019. And then in Latin across the top is a quotation from Virgil, which translated into English is roughly, "Let us improve life through science and art." And truly, we've tried to improve life through science. And this started 33 years earlier when we asked a question. We knew that the kidneys produced a hormone called erythropoietin, or EPO. And EPO is secreted into the bloodstream and goes to the bone marrow and stimulates red blood cell production. And of course, it's red blood cells that carry oxygen to all the cells in the body. And the body doesn't count red blood cells. Only hematologists do that. What the body does is sense oxygen delivery. And if oxygen delivery is not adequate systemically, it increases the production of EPO, and that leads to an increase in red blood cell mass and oxygen delivery. So it's a beautiful homeostatic system to maintain systemic oxygen delivery. And when we set out, we wanted to try to understand how do cells in the kidney sense oxygen availability and respond to decreased oxygen or hypoxia by increasing EPO production. And we first identified a sequence that's just downstream of the EPO gene in the human genome that's now known as the hypoxia response element. And this short 33 base pair sequence has the property that it can be taken out of the EPO gene, inserted into a heterologous gene, and the expression of that gene will now be induced by hypoxia. And we use that DNA sequence to identify a protein that was present in hypoxic cells, but not in cells that had adequate oxygen, and which bound to this DNA sequence. And we called this protein hypoxia-inducible factor 1, or HIF1. So a factor is a protein. Inducible means it's made in response to a stimulus, and the stimulus is hypoxia or low oxygen levels. So this protein, HIF1, was the first member of a family of proteins identified that are critical for oxygen homeostasis. And when we looked at the levels of the two subunits of this protein, which we called HIF1 alpha and HIF1 beta because we're scientists, so we like to use Greek letters, we found that the HIF1 alpha subunit was present at very high levels in the nucleus of hypoxic cells, and then decayed exponentially as oxygen concentrations were elevated. And it turned out that the levels of the HIF1 alpha protein were regulated by a very elegant mechanism, which is that when oxygen is available, an oxygen atom is inserted into the protein, and this is a signal for its degradation. So when oxygen is available, this hydroxylation event occurs. It occurs on one of two different proline residues within the protein. And this allows the binding of a protein called the von Hippel-Lindau protein, or VHL. And when VHL binds to the hydroxylated HIF-1 alpha, this is a signal for its destruction in a area of the cell called the proteasome. So your body is continuously making HIF-1 alpha, and if oxygen is available, it's degraded, and if it's not available, the protein rapidly accumulates within hypoxic cells. So this ability to regulate the levels of the protein is critical for understanding, for example, why erythropoietin is made at increasingly large amounts under hypoxic conditions. So hypoxia, as I mentioned, is an imbalance between oxygen supply and demand. It can be due either to the fact that cells are using more oxygen. So, for example, in a tumor, there are more cells consuming oxygen, leading to a hypoxia within the tumor. Or it could be due to a decrease in oxygen delivery, as occurs with, for example, atherosclerotic coronary artery disease, where the delivery of blood through one of the main coronary arteries is impaired. And in either case, HIF-1 is induced, and it turns on the expression within each cell of hundreds of genes. Some of these genes serve to increase oxygen delivery, like EPO. Sometimes this occurs only within certain cell types. So, for example, if there's vascular ischemia, only the tissue that is subject to the ischemia shows an increase in HIF-1 levels, and this leads to the production of factors that stimulate blood vessel growth, such as vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF. And then there are also proteins that are induced that allow cells to survive oxygen deprivation. And the classic intracellular adaptation is the switch from oxidative to glycolytic metabolism that is controlled by HIF-1. So now we know of over 8,000 different RNAs that in one cell type or another are induced by hypoxia and allow adaptation. And as I mentioned, the beautiful plasticity of this system is that every cell responds in a unique manner. So the HIFs send a signal, there's hypoxia, respond, and then every cell responds depending on how it's programmed. And this leads to these beautiful individual responses throughout the body. Well, it turned out that HIF-1 had two siblings, HIF-2 alpha and HIF-3 alpha. These proteins are structurally and functionally similar to HIF-1 alpha. They're regulated through the oxygen-dependent degradation, and they can also dimerize with HIF-1 beta and activate transcription. And whereas HIF-1 alpha is present only in is present in all metazoan species and pretty much all nucleated cells within every metazoan species, HIF-2 alpha and HIF-3 alpha are only present in certain cells and only in vertebrate species. So with the evolution of vertebrates, you had a much larger body mass, and this required in the specialized systems of oxygen delivery, like the respiratory and circulatory systems, to evolve. And as part of that process, HIF-2 alpha and HIF-3 alpha came about principally they're active during development to establish the systems of oxygen delivery. Well, I mentioned this beautiful system for regulating red blood cell production through EPO. And this system is dysregulated in individuals with chronic kidney disease. And the more severe the chronic kidney disease, the greater the deficiency in EPO production. And prior to 1986, patients required transfusions of red blood cells, and that put them at risk of various viral diseases. And so it was a really tremendous advance when the EPO gene was cloned and recombinant EPO was produced as one of the first biotech drugs in 1986. And this greatly improved the quality of life in patients with chronic kidney disease. The patients would go to the doctor and say, I feel terrible. The doctor would say, of course you feel terrible. You have chronic kidney disease. But the reason they felt terrible was that they were anemic. And when the anemia was treated, they felt much better. So this was a great improvement in the quality of life. Of course, it's an injectable biologic, which has certain limitations. And some patients, for various reasons, don't respond to EPO. So the next advance was the identification of drugs that target the protein, the HIF-1 alpha hydroxylation that I described. And these drugs inhibit the enzyme that inserts that oxygen atom, so that now there are higher levels of HIF production, leading to higher production of EPO. And this probably involves EPO production in the liver, where EPO is made in the fetus. And that probably accounts why even patients who don't have kidneys, who have their kidneys removed, respond to these drugs. So these are small molecules, so they can be taken by mouth. They increase HIF activity, they increase EPO synthesis, and they increase red blood cell production. And this is the chemical structure of the first of these drugs that underwent clinical trials. And that first clinical trial was performed here in Asia. This drug, roxadustat, has been approved in a number of countries. And there are now 5 different HIF stabilizers that have been approved in various countries for the treatment of anemia in patients with chronic kidney disease. So this was really the first translation of our basic science discoveries to the clinic. Well, the next part of the talk involves this very distinguished gentleman, whose name was Eugen von Hippel, and he had the title of Professor Extraordinary, which is quite a title, at the University of Heidelberg. And he was an ophthalmologist in the early 1900s who identified patients who had retinal lesions, and these were retinal tumors called hemangioblastomas, retinal hemangioblastomas. So he identified these tumors, and then a Swedish pathologist named Lindau in the 1920s performed autopsies on patients with these retinal hemangioblastomas and found that these patients often had tumors elsewhere in their body, particularly in the kidney. And so this collection, and this was found to be inherited through an autosomal dominant mechanism in families, and this became known as the von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. And this is a section of a kidney cancer from a patient with von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. It's called clear cell renal cell carcinoma because you can see the cells don't stain well with hematoxin and eosin. And this is because they're filled with glycogen and lipid, because their metabolism has been dysregulated, because they lack that VHL protein that I described to you that binds to the hydroxylated HIFs and causes their degradation. So in the germline, they have one wild-type allele and one mutant allele, and then in the kidney, the wild-type allele is mutated, so there's no functional VHL, and that drives the tumor formation. You can see on the left the parental cells from a patient who has a kidney tumor, and you can see that regardless of whether we culture the cells at high oxygen or low oxygen, there are very high levels of HIF-1 alpha and HIF-2 alpha. But if we insert a functional copy of the VHL gene back into these cells, you can see now at high oxygen conditions, the HIF-1 alpha and HIF-2 alpha are being degraded again. So it's the failure to have the normal oxygen-dependent degradation of the HIFs that drives the formation of these kidney tumors. So we can put those parental cells back into a mouse and they will form a tumor, but the rescued cells will not. And we know now that the HIFs are activated in common cancers as well as in the hereditary von Hippel-Lindau syndrome, and that the HIFs contribute to cancer progression by turning on the expression of genes that contribute to every critical aspect of cancer progression. And so it was very exciting when a small biotech company called Peloton in Dallas developed a small molecule that can bind to HIF2 alpha, which plays a particularly critical role in kidney cancer in von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. And when this drug, which is now called belzutifan, binds to HIF2 alpha, it prevents HIF2 alpha from forming a functional dimer with HIF1 beta. So there's now no functional HIF2 within the cells. And this was one of the first trials of belzutifan. And this is a waterfall plot looking at the change in tumor growth. The yellow bars show patients who have had a decrease in tumor growth. That's called a partial response. And then the black bars are patients whose tumors have not changed significantly, and that's referred to as stable disease. And the combination of those two, which is known as the disease control rate, was 80% in this trial in a disease where there was basically no effective therapy once the tumor had spread beyond the kidney. So this was a truly remarkable result. And within several years, the U.S. FDA had approved the drug for the treatment of renal cell carcinoma in patients with the von Hippel-Lindau syndrome. And then more recently, last year, the FDA approved belzutifan as a third-line treatment of other renal cell carcinomas in patients who don't have the hereditary form of the disease. As I mentioned, in my lab, we've been developing drugs that are both HIF1 and HIF2 dual inhibitors that work well in a variety of cancers. And one of the really remarkable effects of these drugs is that they take the response to the immuno-oncology drugs that you heard about from a very small number to a very high number, so that we can completely eradicate the cancers in half of the animals that we treat with the combination of these drugs. And we think that this is going to have a dramatic impact on the response to the immuno-oncology drugs that you heard about earlier. Well, I just wanted to have a few closing thoughts. The first, as we all know, is that it all starts with education, specifically science education. And unfortunately, you know that in India better than we know that in the U.S. It's sad to say. We start with that. We do basic science because that gives us fundamental discoveries that impact on disease processes. And then if we're lucky, we can translate that into novel therapies, which if they involve small molecules can decrease costs and increase global healthcare accessibility. The focus on development of biologicals, which is very great interest now, has perhaps the drawback that these drugs are difficult to transport and store in areas without advanced healthcare systems. And so there are still many advantages to trying to develop small molecule drugs, I think. On the right is my high school biology teacher, Rose Nelson. She was my inspiration for a career in science. Thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
Joining us next at the podium will be Mr. Jayan Nadigar, Commissioner of Flanders Investment and Trade.
Good morning, Honorable Chief Minister and rest of the dignitaries on the dais, and then the dynamic life science ecosystem of Hyderabad. We are very proud to be associated with the state of Telangana in supporting and promoting the cooperation between the two regions in life sciences segment. It's been underway as the international partner region for the past 2 years, and then we look forward to having more such engagements. We have also had the Telangana state team with the companies visiting Flanders, and then the discussions are at various levels of maturity levels. So we look forward to continue this engagement, and then we are proud, and then we would like to invite more companies to engage with us in the coming months. Once again, it's a great privilege and a pride to be the international partner region at the 21st BioAsia event, and wish the event all the success. Thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartup TV.
I now invite Mr. Jayesh Ranjan to share his insights and deliver the welcome address for BioAsia 2024. Let us welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Begin the 21st edition of BioAsia 2024. A very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Government of Telangana. 21 years ago, when this event was conceptualized and started, we never imagined that it will really capture the imagination of the entire industry, the entire research community, the administrators, policymakers, regulators. But as we have completed these 2 decades, we have realized that this has become one of the most looked forward event for the industry. The entire world, so to say, looks up to this event, tries to understand what are the new discussions, what are the new trends, what are the new partnerships that are going to be forged here. This is almost like the World Economic Forum's life sciences vertical, so to say, that gets represented here. I'm also happy to share that, like the earlier editions, this edition is going to have some very important tactical discussions on some of the most pressing challenges, most pressing opportunities. Some of the most eminent speakers and thought leaders from across the world are present with us, who will be sharing their perspectives. Every year, one of the features which really makes people take note of is the interface that we have with regulatory agencies, with regulators. We know that life sciences is a very dynamic environment where we are always trying to keep pace with technology, with new regulations. So that is again getting covered here through multiple sessions. We also know that life sciences is one vertical which is getting disrupted very, very rapidly with innovations. And we have, again, lots of curated sessions which focus on innovation, particularly technology, digital technologies, and manufacturing technology. So I hope that all of us would be able to make the best of this platform that has been created primarily by the Telangana government, of course with the help of all our partners, all our sponsors, and we look forward to a year-long engagement with all of you here in Telangana. I'm particularly happy that Honorable Chief Minister is attending this event after a long gap of many years that a Chief Minister is making his presence felt. We welcome you, sir, on behalf of all the delegates, and we look forward to listening to you on how you want to provide strategic leadership, not just to our country, but the whole world as the government of Telangana in this very important domain of life sciences. Once again, warm welcome to all of you. Let us all have very productive, useful, and meaningful sessions. Thank you very much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartup TV.
Now, moving on, I would like to call upon Mr. Naveen Gulapalli, Head of Novartis Business Services, to please address us all. It's going to be a long walk, so let us welcome him with a huge round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Chief Minister, Honorable Minister, and respected guests. Really privileged to be here. You know, I'm a Pakka Hyderabadi. I've grown up here, went to school, college, did my education here, went abroad working for a few companies. But when the opportunity came to actually come back to India and prove to the world the power of Indian intellect, I grabbed it with both hands. Today, Novartis has been a visionary, is here since over 15 years. But today, we have over 10% of our global headcount, 10% of the employees of Novartis based here. The impact of that, the easiest way I explain what Novartis does to my mother is when I tell her that the average lifespan has gone up 20 years in the last 50 years. Just in India, it's gone up 12 years in the last 20 years alone. And people live longer because of companies like Novartis. One of the few companies. So really privileged again to see several innovative pharma companies and many healthcare companies advancing technology for the benefit of humankind, for mankind, right from here in Hyderabad. The power of this congregation for the future is really incredible. So pleased to be associated with BioAsia for more than 10 years. I think, as I said, I think this is an amazing place for nearly 8,000 people at Novartis to make a global impact all over, you know, improve lives, cure disease, extend lives anywhere in the world, right from here in Novartis Knowledge City, right in the high-tech city area. So thank you. Really privileged to be here and look forward to this congregation. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to MyStartuptv.
In biotechnology in the world, specializing in advanced biomanufacturing and personalized medicine. We specialize in vaccines. From the University of Queensland, the Gardasil vaccine came from there. We also supply the Nipah vaccine to India whenever you have a crisis that comes out of our building. And so all of this within this university environment where we do translation. We've translated $62 billion of product in the last 15 years. We have translated more than all the other universities of Australia put together, and then embedded in a Queensland environment of excellence. And my colleagues over there, if you want to do research in Australia.
As you know, AstraZeneca is the global pharmaceutical company with an aspiration to bring, being pioneers in science and bring innovation to the globe and also to the world. And we have also been very passionate, apart from bringing innovative science to India, but also on the sustainability. So we're doing a lot, and hope we will have a chance to talk about this innovation and sustainability in our panel discussion today. Thank you so much.
Our businesses span from API, generics, branded generics, services, biologics, and drug discovery. Today, primarily our revenue comes from generics, API, and related businesses, but we have a very ambitious drug discovery program, and we should talk about it today.
Worked probably under the most prolific researcher in his period, Dr. Paul Janssen, who was twice nominated for Nobel. I then also run the research institute called the Flemish Institute of Biotechnology, which is one of a world-class research institute. But I'm looking forward to I'm privileged to have this august panel next to me, who will probably give me a lot of new ideas. Thank you.
We are a large generic integrated manufacturer and marketeer, and also now pivoting towards discovery-led organization in terms of investing in small molecules, biologics, ADCs, vaccines, and continue to build both on the access and the affordability front.
Based in Cologne, Germany, and together with my colleagues and our associates, we want to advance medicine by discovering new cell and gene therapies, provide those therapies to potential other companies, and also have devices and equipment which allows discovery, research, and manufacturing. Besides that, we also have a pharma division called Miltenyi Biomedicine, who develops their own CAR-T therapies. Pleasure to be here.
We have recently started treating our patients with first make in India CAR-T cell therapy and first gene therapy from our country.
And the first question is to Ton. Ton, based on, and he and I go back in time, based on his experience in Janssen and in Miltenyi, do you find that the mindset is extremely important within the, not just the research community, but the entire company community to make innovation a reality? And number two, do you believe that some of the existing and new technologies will play a role as we move forward in the drug discovery area?
I go back to two inspirational leaders. I had, like Ajit, the privilege to know Dr. Paul Janssen, who brought with the speed of at least 2 medicines per year, breakthrough medicines to the market. And at the same time, I'm working now 6 years with Miltenyi. Dr. Stefan Miltenyi brings also a breakthrough in cell and gene therapy by a ritual of at least once ASH per year. He has a number of very new tools. What makes it, in my view, in my experience, unique? Both think the patients are waiting. They have an eagerness to address the diseases today. And they're inspired by whether it's HIV, whether it's vaccines, whether it's oncology, whether it's CNS diseases. Address the diseases now. The patients cannot wait for a 12-year development program until we figure out. And COVID was a big example of that. So that's for me the number one reason, the eagerness to treat diseases. The second, being in an ecosystem which is fully equipped with top physicians and scientists who have the same eagerness to develop. And therefore, India is a fantastic place. First of all, India is eager to live longer and better. I mean, there is no doubt in the first category to address the diseases. Secondly, the ecosystem here with outstanding physicians, outstanding scientists who can collaborate and work together is a second driver of advancing medicine much faster than the pace which we had in the last decade. And the third point, I want to commend India's eagerness for local manufacturing. Ensuring that the progress you make, you can also translate and scale it up in an own area or an own country, so that you're not dependent on supplies from all over the world, but you can take your own destiny in your own hands. So I think these are, to my experience, the three elements, and I want to add one behavioral element to it, and then I conclude, which is you must be willing to take a risk. Risk-taking belongs to advancement of medicine, and the risk is not to be taken just on your own. The risk is to be taken in potential partnerships, in collaborating with each other, in entrepreneurial ways and openness to exchange. That's what I think are the key elements to progress, but mainly I want to conclude it's stopping with a slow system of farm development and change to a fast system to get to the patients. Thank you.
Then I will hand it over to Sharvil. Sharvil, the question to you is, what is your impression? Sorry, I'm looking away because the mic is here. But what is your impression of the life sciences and healthcare landscape in India in terms of innovation? And how do you think India can transform itself to becoming some kind of a global innovation hub? And then I think we would all be very keen to hear from you, as you are one of the first companies to have developed and registered an NCE. So from your experience, it would be great to hear what are the lessons learned.
Thank you. First and foremost, I think it has been a longish journey in terms of, I think, learning about many things in the organization. I think if I want to break it down into a few things for what we also do and what we hope in terms of the evolving sciences, we all started learning good science, which is chemistry, how to do PKPD, how to do ADME studies and all of that. And very soon, we all became good at it, and we were able to screen a lot of compounds, get a lot of products, ideas out. And then the whole development engine that had to be built to manage these kind of programs was the next big challenge for the organization, in terms of how do you take a product from discovery to development and a global development, which even became harder. So I think that was the second part of the big learning process in the firm, that moving from discovery to development, and how do you look at all the opportunities and the challenges that you need to move forward with. But I think there are 3-4 things that are very important. As an organization, we did it, and I think if innovation has to grow in India, it's very critical. One is, as Professor Toon said, is risk. Both risk in terms of financial risk, but also risk in terms of what you're going to be able to be successful or not successful, in terms of the high risk of burden to prove a new chemical entity or a new biological. So I think today the biggest gap that we see is there is very little risk funding available for innovation or pure discovery. As I always say, the technology sector saw a lot of that investment in terms of new startups getting funded, but the time frame for that was 2 to 3 years. You could see innovation happen in 3 years. You could know a proof of concept in 3 years. Whereas in medicine, it's, if you're lucky, 6 years, but sometimes even longer. So to have that opportunity to have that kind of long investment cycle was something that was missing, and that as companies we have done it, but obviously it's important that we create a system for it. The second is infrastructure. I think infrastructure is very, very critical, both on the discovery side, but also on the development side. And to some extent, after many challenges in India, we became risk averse. So today, unfortunately, to do a clinical trial in India, it takes longer to do one here than it takes to initiate a clinical trial in the West. So I think that became a little bit of a challenge to say, how do you navigate this through and make sure that you have a development program that can run efficiently, both within the country and as a global program outside as well. The other areas that were very important for us is to drop projects more than select projects. Is how do you stop doing work, because you have finite resources and one has to worry about how one will invest behind the programs that you all want to which you want to run and move forward. And finally, it's the whole collaboration that is important, both between academia and industry. You have amazing examples in the West and other places where you have seen great revolutionary technologies, products come out through the innovation that happens in universities and academia, and then gets transferred into a pharmaceutical or a healthcare organization. And I think that kind of cultivation has started here. We have some people on the panel talking about some of the CAR-T opportunities that have been there. So I think it has been all of that, and I think consistent effort, investing behind people, investing behind in pure infrastructure as Zydus today, all the way from screening to molecular identification to ADME studies, PK studies, phase 1 to phase 3 global trials. We do everything in-house. Now, I'm not saying that's the right way to go about it alone, but I think we had to strongly build this capability within the organization, because having built that, we got 2 advantages. One is with the finite resources that a firm may have, they can do better with it, utilize it better. And the second is time. Everybody is crunched in terms of wanting to do work, and if we have those resources, we can scale up activities. So while running 2 programs in the early 2000s to running 20 discovery programs now, all of that for us has been only possible because we could build all critical infrastructure within the organization and co-create it with partners around the world that we wanted to do. Coming to a specific part of our discovery, we are very proud to be one of the few companies who have NCE that is approved and commercialized in the country. We already have 12 million patients who have been treated with the product. We are the first product to be approved for NASH NAFLD. It's in the guidelines for NAFLD and globally in the world now. And we have large clinical programs running in the US. But what we learned very quickly as an Indian company is that, we look at diabetes, we look at cardiovascular drugs, GI looks so big, so interesting. But when you think about doing global programs on them with outcome studies, these are sort of never-ending programs that can never get done. So very fast as an organization, we learned that we would focus on unmet needs. We would focus on diseases there where there have been no proof of concept or you're sort of first in class. And so today, most of our programs that we run, even SARO in the US is driven for PBC, which is an orphan indication. Our next molecule, ZYL1, is in Parkinson's and ALS, and CAPS, which is again rare and orphan indications. And we believe that to do good, and not only do good science, but to make a difference, it's good that if we can pick up these neglected, rare orphan disease areas and create an impact, because if we are successful in any one of them, it will be far bigger impact than having the next diabetes molecule into the market from a company of our size and scale.
And I really want to open it out to our panel here, and I think GB is pulling his mic, so he might have a question for you.
So, Sharvil, companies like ours are valued based on earnings, and the more you spend on R&D, the less your profits are. How do you address this dilemma?
So I think it is a very big challenge. I have had a lot of heated discussions with certain communities of analysts who talk about, if you do good, you get rewarded. If you don't do good, you get penalized very badly. I think it's something that will take time. I think examples of success will create an awareness and opportunity for the investing community or the shareholders to feel the need for doing this innovation and change. So I think that's only going to come by results. Results, if few companies are able to show innovation, breakthrough discoveries, and commercial success, not only science, but create commercial success out of it. I think that is going to catalyze a lot of, I would say, interest in R&D. Today, R&D is almost look like an expense, and that's why the first thing that companies unfortunately need to do sometimes is to reduce R&D because of the pressures that they have in terms of performance and market pressures. But it is evolving. I think it is something that as entrepreneurs we have to stick to it, commit to it, and show success. If we do not show success, I think we have to be also to be blamed that we obviously put resources behind something that was not successful. But I am very confident that in India it is something that will get created. We do need an ecosystem for that to happen. Both the government regulations, risk funding, all of that is required. And if all that happens over the next 10 years, we can definitely become a hub for good discovery and science. But as I said, I told one of the analysts that you never valued me for my innovation, but when somebody else gets a $4 billion valuation, you suddenly say, I'm late to market. So where was that innovation then?
So you're absolutely right, Sharvil, to Prasad, that's a balancing act, and how well you balance on that tightrope is always a challenge. And now I'm going to ask Rahul. Rahul, you have the unique challenge like Sharvil and Tone of bringing in a new product, CAR-T in India. And I know the ecosystem which was being discussed previously is going to be extremely important. It's not just the research institutes, but it's going to be the government in terms of IP protection, in terms of providing you public partnership, regulatory hurdles, the financing community that Sharvil talked about, people who are willing to bet for the 10-year life cycle as opposed for the next year. All of these challenges, as you incubate, are going to stare you in your face. So how do you deal with it, Rahul? We'd love to hear.
First of all, thank you so much for the question, and it's really an honor to be here. There are so many questions in one question, so maybe what I will do, I will give you a little story about how was our journey. That will give you a fair idea how we innovated in our country with collaboration and how we built the infrastructure in a government setting, as well as how we translated our academic project to a commercial, now commercial success yet, but that time will tell, but just we commercialized first CAR-T in India. So we started almost 10 years back in IIT Bombay as a faculty member. And one of the biggest challenge was that this CAR-T, that time it was still investigational, but it was expected that it will cost around $500,000 US per patient. That means almost 3 to 4 crore rupees per patient in our country. And many of us can't even afford it, that cost, right? So the idea, in fact, the idea came that time that if we own the IP and start till the end, we control the product development. That means we generate the new product. We know how the process works. If we control start to end,